Imagine you're scrolling through YouTube late at night, you know how it is. You click on a video, there's some soft meditation music playing in the background, and this narrator is talking about global unity.
Oh yeah, the classic late-night algorithm rabbit hole.
Exactly. And it's this really beautiful, calming message, right? About how racial, national, and religious divisions are like entirely an illusion. And you're sitting there nodding along thinking, yeah, that makes total
Right,
sense.
it's very universal,
Yeah.
very appealing.
But then you let the playlist keep running. And like 3 clicks later, the channel is suddenly using ancient Hebrew numerology to mathematically prove that Donald Trump is the literal prophesied Messiah.
Yeah, it is, I mean, it's an incredible intellectual whiplash.
It really is. And it doesn't stop there. Further down the playlist, it connects this massive political revelation to a clinical diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia.
You basically go from what feels like, I don't know, a relaxing yoga retreat directly into hardcore geopolitical prophecy and psychiatric theory. And it's all presented as one unbroken continuum.
It's wild. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a really sprawling, highly complex digital ecosystem for you. It's a YouTube channel called Baba Shuva, A New World, a New Reality.
Created by a figure who goes by Prophet Nathanor, or sometimes Nathanor Ben Zvi.
Right. And our mission today is to understand the hidden architecture of this channel. Like, how does this creator take ancient texts, the modern news cycle, and mental health advocacy, and somehow weld them all together into a completely cohesive universe?
And just a quick heads up for you as we get into this material. This creator deals with some incredibly intense, politically charged topics.
Oh, for sure. Very heavy stuff.
Yeah, everything from specific geopolitical agendas to foundational critiques of major world religions like Judaism and Christianity. So we just want to be clear, we are not here today to validate, endorse, or debunk any of these political or religious claims.
Right, we're totally neutral here.
Exactly. We are simply fascinated by how modern belief systems are constructed in the digital age. We're just going to impartially map out exactly how this channel's theology actually works.
So let's start at the very foundation of this entire worldview. Because before it gets into any of the politics or the prophecy, it starts with an episode in their Podcast from Heaven series, which is titled The Messiah's Sacred Vision, Underneath, We Are All the Same.
Which is a great title, honestly. And the central premise there is that human fragmentation is essentially a perceptual error.
Like a mistake in how we see the world.
Yeah, exactly. The creator argues that the borders on our maps, the different languages we speak, the dogmas of our religions, they're all just artificial barriers.
Right. And they present this not just as like a sociological observation, but as a full-blown spiritual emergency.
Definitely. The creator basically posits that every single person contains a divine spark. But our inability to see that spark in each other, that is what causes all global suffering.
So what's their fix for that?
Well, the proposed solution is this radical, almost aggressive commitment to love and mutual understanding. It requires like an active dismantling of fear.
I was thinking about this, and it's kind of like looking at a massive, complex stained glass window.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like we get so hyper-focused on the different shapes and colors of the glass, the red pieces, the blue pieces, the lead border separating them, that we completely forget it's the exact same light source shining through all of them.
Yeah, we totally lose the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And the channel is essentially demanding that we stop looking at the glass and start looking at the light. But the mechanism for achieving this isn't just, passive meditation.
No, not at all. The source material insists that humanity is just entirely too stubborn to wake up to this reality on its own.
We need to be forced.
Forced, exactly. That is the pivotal concept that drives the rest of the channel's narrative. This beautiful unity requires a catalyst because the current world is just deeply broken.
So how does that repair actually happen in their theology?
Well, in the Baba Shuva framework, forcing us to recognize our shared essence can only be initiated by the revelation of a specific figure, which is Messiah ben David.
And the Messiah isn't just a savior in this context, right?
Right. The Messiah is the active, disruptive force that basically shatters that stained glass window so we can finally see the light.
But shattering glass is inherently a violent process.
Very violent. And that brings us to this specific, highly curated timeline on the channel.
Right. They map out a period they call the Era of Divine Reckoning. And they actually put hard dates on it from 2017 to 2026.
Yeah, they frame this current decade as a period of literal, inescapable divine wrath.
And they use real-world events to back this up, don't they? Like curating chaotic news to prove God is applying pressure.
They do. The timeline begins with a specific astronomical event on July 27, 2018. They call it the Night of the Bloody Moon.
Which they interpret as a direct warning shot from the heavens.
Exactly. And from there, the channel heavily features things like the COVID-19 pandemic, devastating global tornadoes, massive earthquakes, and the October 7th attacks in Israel.
You know, when you look at the psychology behind this, there's this fascinating concept called apophenia.
Oh, where people see patterns in random data.
Yes, exactly. It's the human brain's natural tendency to perceive meaningful patterns within completely random, chaotic noise, because we are biologically hardwired to hate chaos.
Right. Chaos means danger.
Exactly. So when a global pandemic hits, or a horrific attack happens, our sense of safety is just entirely destroyed. The randomness of tragedy is terrifying.
So a channel like this comes along and offers like a psychological lifeline.
Right. It basically says, hey, don't worry, this isn't random chaos. This is a highly orchestrated divine wake-up call.
It transforms meaningless tragedy into a painful but necessary lesson. And the channel uses the Hebrew concept of teshuvah, which roughly translates to a return or repentance.
So the rat has a purpose.
Yeah, the creator's framework suggests that this wrath is a radical course corrector. The divine is applying unbearable pressure to human society to squeeze out the hatred, basically.
To force us back to that original unified state, so the destruction is actually deeply restorative to them.
Exactly. But if the world is undergoing this massive divine demolition project, it logically requires a wrecking ball on Earth.
A physical agent to carry it out.
Right. The channel argues that this divine pressure isn't just atmospheric, it's political. And this is where things get really interesting.
Because this is where the channel seamlessly merges ancient prophecy with the modern secular news cycle. And specifically, they focus on the return of Donald Trump.
The synthesis here is quite remarkable, honestly. The creator has built extensive playlists dedicated entirely to what they call the era of Trump.
With a massive hyper-focus on his second term and his inauguration.
Yeah. And you watch these videos, and they are built out of standard mainstream news clips. Like, nothing French.
Right. It's footage from the Wall Street Journal discussing plans to deport 4% of the U.S. population, or CBS News reporting on Trump overturning Biden-era sanctions against Israeli settlers.
Or Israeli broadcasts highlighting his inauguration tribute to the former hostage Noah Argamani.
And to anyone else, this is just the nightly news, right? It's geopolitics, policy shifts, border management.
But the channel runs all of this through an ancient mystical framework to claim its literal prophecy unfolding in real time.
And the mechanism they use to make that massive leap is called Gematria.
Right. So historically, in ancient Hebrew, there were no separate symbols for numbers. The letters of the alphabet themselves actually served as numbers.
Like Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, and so on.
Exactly. So gematria is this mystical practice of adding up the numerical value of the letters in a word or a name to uncover its hidden spiritual meaning.
Okay, and the math they do on the channel is incredibly specific, because the creator takes the name Donald Trump and spells it out in Hebrew.
Yep, and when you add up the numerical values of those specific Hebrew letters, the total equals exactly 424.
Wow, wait, literally 424.
Literally 424. And that number is the absolute linchpin of this entire theology.
Why that number specifically?
Because in the system of gematria, if you take the Hebrew phrase Messiah ben David, the prophesied Redeemer we talked about earlier, and add up those letters,
Don't tell me.
the total is also exactly 424.
Oh my gosh. I mean, from a pure puzzle-solving perspective, you completely see why that mathematical coincidence is so wildly compelling to the creator.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like a massive revelation.
Because in this worldview, that equation, Donald Trump equals 424, Messiah ben David equals 424, it entirely erases the boundary between the secular and the divine.
Right. A news clip about deportation policies or West Bank settlements isn't just a political maneuver anymore.
It's the physical manifestation of the Messiah doing the gritty, earthly work of rearranging populations and borders to match a divine schematic.
The nightly news literally becomes the sacred text. That erasure of boundaries is a defining feature of the Baba Shuvi channel.
They treat geopolitical policy as spiritual revelation.
Exactly. A presidential inauguration speech is viewed as a prophetic milestone marking the exact progression of that era of divine reckoning.
They view these political actions as the necessary friction required to bring about that global unity.
Yeah. But, we've been looking outward this whole time at global pandemics, international borders, U.S. presidents.
Right, the big macro stuff.
But the channel also makes a radical pivot inward. Because the burden of understanding all these massive world-altering patterns, it takes an immense toll on the human mind.
And the channel explicitly connects this grand geopolitical narrative to severe clinical mental health conditions, which is such an unexpected turn.
It really is. This is arguably the most vulnerable and, frankly, fascinating layer of the source material.
Because the creator, Nathan Orr Ben-Zvi, prominently features a book he authored titled Divine Schizophrenia.
Yeah. And alongside the political playlists, there is a dedicated initiative on the channel aimed at raising awareness about paranoid schizophrenia.
And the duality in how this is presented is just striking. Like, you will see playlists that provide straightforward, diagnostic, professional information about schizophrenia.
Using totally modern clinical language.
Right, but then right next to it, there are playlists dedicated to spiritual remedies, like featuring 7-chakra hang drum meditation music and deep dives into finding medicine for the soul.
So the channel doesn't deny the deep suffering or the clinical reality of the illness, but it fundamentally reframes what the illness actually is.
Right. If we look at the history of how human societies handle non-ordinary states of consciousness, there is this massive divide.
Oh, for sure. Ancient cultures handled it very differently than we do.
Yeah. Ancient and indigenous cultures often viewed individuals who heard voices or saw visions as people undergoing a shamanic crisis.
They were seen as conduits to the divine, right?
Exactly. Like, they were bearing a heavy psychic burden for the entire community. But modern Western psychiatry, through the lens of the DSM-5,
Views those exact same symptoms strictly as a neurological pathology, something to be medicated and suppressed.
right. And the creator is trying to build a bridge between those two radically different worlds.
By using that term, divine schizophrenia.
Exactly. The channel suggests that what our modern society clinicalizes as a psychiatric break might actually be a mind cracking open to receive these massive, overwhelming truths about the universe.
I mean, if you were perceiving hidden mathematical connections between world leaders and ancient prophecies all day long, that influx of data is going to look like madness to the outside world.
It's a profound reframing of extreme psychological suffering.
It creates this sort of liminal space where clinical pathology and prophetic vision just overlap.
It really challenges you to consider whether the intense, non-ordinary realities experienced by those with schizophrenia might contain, like, fragmented pieces of a divine frequency.
A frequency that the rest of the world is simply unable to tune into.
Right, but here's the thing. If a creator is building a completely new operating system for reality,
Which they absolutely are.
right, one where mental illness is a divine conduit, the nightly news is a prophetic text, and global disasters are like divine therapy,
Yeah.
that new system cannot coexist with the old rules. It inherently has to deconstruct established world religions to make room for itself.
And the channel embraces that deconstruction
Yeah.
aggressively. Like it
Yeah.
explicitly brands itself as a new stream in Judaism.
And declares its ultimate mission is to reveal the whole truth.
Right. And to do that, it methodically critiques the foundational tenets of both Orthodox Judaism and mainstream Christianity.
And the source material gets incredibly specific with these critiques. It doesn't just offer vague philosophical disagreements.
No, it targets specific verses.
Right. For example, it challenges the strict Orthodox interpretations of Exodus chapter 35, verse 3.
Which is the biblical prohibition against kindling a fear on the Sabbath.
Exactly. The channel argues fiercely against the rigid, legalistic interpretation of this rule.
Because the critique of the Sabbath fire is highly symbolic for them. In many Orthodox traditions, the intricate rules around what constitutes work on the Sabbath represent a strict adherence to religious law.
Right. It's about the details.
Yeah. And by challenging that specific verse, the creator is attacking the concept of legalism itself. They're basically arguing that getting bogged down in the microscopic details of religious law distracts the believer from the actual living presence of the divine.
And then the channel applies that exact same deconstructive lens to Christianity.
Oh yeah, very much so.
It features multiple videos arguing against the divinity of Jesus, rejecting the claim that he is God or the ultimate Messiah.
But what I find really fascinating is the channel's intense focus on the Apostle Paul.
Yes. They dedicate significant time to questioning Paul's influence on the development of Christian theology.
Targeting Paul is a really calculated theological move, because in academic and theological circles, there's actually a long-standing debate about Paul's role.
Right, because Jesus and his immediate disciples operated entirely within a Jewish context, right?
Exactly. It was Paul who expanded the movement to the Gentiles, which fundamentally altered its theology and essentially created a distinct religion we now know as Christianity.
And the Baba Shuvia channel utilizes this historical debate to suggest that Paul's teachings essentially hijacked the original faith.
Adding layers of dogma that diverted humanity from the true path.
It's not like they are trying to burn the old religious texts and start from scratch, though.
No, it's more like an architectural renovation.
That's a perfect way to put it. They aren't tearing down the entire building. They believe the foundation is sound, but they are taking a sledgehammer to all the drywall, the drop ceilings, the strange additions.
Everything that's been tacked on over the centuries by dogmatic institutions.
Right. They want to strip it all the way back to the original foundational beams to reveal that core message we started with.
Unmediated divine truth, where underneath we are all the exact same.
The dismantling of these older religious structures is basically viewed as a necessary precursor to the new world promised in the channel's title.
Because if your ultimate goal is absolute global unity, then exclusive religious dogmas that divide people into the saved and the damned, or the chosen and the unchosen,
They have to go.
they absolutely must be eradicated.
So let's take a step back and look at the sheer scale of the architecture we've just explored here.
It is massive.
It really is. We started with a universal plea to see past the illusion of our differences. We explored how the terror of global pandemics and chaotic events is psychologically repackaged as a deliberate divine course correction.
Then we learned how the ancient math of Gematria is used to decode secular news clips.
Right, transforming a modern U.S. president into an earthly agent of prophecy.
And we waded into the deep waters of mental health, looking at how clinical schizophrenia is reframed as this heavy prophetic burden.
And finally, we saw a systematic attempt to dismantle the dogmatic rules of the world's oldest religions to make way for a unified truth.
You know, the true value of unpacking a channel like this, regardless of your personal stance on any of its claims, is that it serves as a masterclass in modern sense-making.
Absolutely. Because we exist in this unprecedented era of information overload.
We are relentlessly bombarded with terrifying global news, shifting political landscapes, and complex personal crises.
And the Baba Shuva channel demonstrates the incredible lengths the human mind will go to synthesize disparate, chaotic data into a singular narrative.
A narrative that actually provides meaning, order, and purpose.
It really highlights our deep, fundamental need for a cohesive story. So I want to leave you with a thought to mull over as you navigate your own information feeds this week. If a single digital creator can take the numerical value of a modern politician's name, weave it through the trauma of a global pandemic, connect it to the clinical diagnosis of schizophrenia, and use it to rewrite the rules of ancient religions, all to build one perfectly self-contained reality.
Yeah.
What hidden patterns, narratives, or connections are you subconsciously building right now just to make sense of the overwhelming world around you?